facilitator and the director of the Commission for Graduate Students. So before I introduce Dr. Leslie Cordy, I'm going to go over a couple of ground rules that we have. This is an interactive webinar, so you will have the opportunity to ask questions during the presentation. So I would ask that you unmute your button, state your name, and then ask your question. For those who do not wish to speak, please submit your question via the chat button. There will also be polling questions throughout the presentation, so all responses should be submitted via the chat, and then Dr. Leslie Cordy will address those questions accordingly. So without further ado, I will introduce Dr. Leslie Cordy, excuse me. Yes, nice picture. She is currently assistant professor in the adult education program at Auburn University. She comes with us with over 20 years of experience in higher education, government, military, and corporate America. Her background includes distant learning, adult education, training, instructional design, program and professional development, as well as healthcare. She serves as an affiliate faculty with Auburn University, Office of University Writing, where she contributes to the university-wide ePortfolio initiative and research. And regarding her areas of research, it includes next generation learning, online education gaming, ePortfolio applications, and faculty engagement. So let's give Dr. Leslie Cordy a round of applause, or thumbs up since everyone is muted. Dr. Cordy.
All right. Well, thank you, Josie, for that very spectacular welcome, and I'm excited to be here. And I'm excited to see many familiar faces, and we look forward to talking with you about ePortfolio today, and hopefully meeting some of your needs and questions about the ePortfolio. So here are the topics that we had put together for today's webinar. It is an open session, so if you do have some questions, as Josie said, go ahead and put them in the chat. I have 2 or 3 questions throughout the presentation, sort of to engage you and to get you thinking about ePortfolio. And of course, we'll have the Q&A session, as Josie mentioned, at the end of the session. We want you to be able to, at the end of the session, be able to go out and either improve or start that online professional presence. So that's really the main goal. But here are the topics. I will try to talk about what is a ePortfolio and where to use it, along with some of the basic steps in terms of creating the ePortfolio, along with what you should do beforehand before you get started. I have a few examples of professional ePortfolios and a link to a website for you to explore some more ideas so that you can decide what will work for you or what might not work for you. And then, of course, the best practices in terms of the basic do's and don'ts. All right, so the first idea I want to kind of get is if you could let us know in the chat what your interest is today on ePortfolio, whether you're A, not sure, B, you know some friends or colleagues who use the ePortfolio, that you want to develop that professional online presence, or maybe you just want to learn how to improve it. So let's take a few seconds to do that. And I can see the answers coming up. Okay, I see a lot of C's, but I do see some A's. People are not even sure, so that's great. Couple of B's. All right, and a few others. For some people, it's a couple different ones. All right, multiple choice, I like that. Okay, so there's a wide variety. We should be able to cover most of your interests today. And we also have that Q&A session at the end, as we noted. So hopefully we'll be able to meet your needs. So what is an ePortfolio? An ePortfolio is a personal website, but it is more than an enhanced online resume. It's more than just posting your resume with a web link in hard copy as a scan. It is the idea that you are creating an online professional presence where you are communicating to an outside audience not only your resume, but your skills in terms of what you have accomplished, what are your experiences, what have you learned in your education, and what credentials have you earned. So each ePortfolio can look similar in terms of format, but it is unique to you in terms of your skills and your credentials. So there may be many different things in terms of describing who you are, what you do, what you have done, and then of course where to find you or contact you. All right, so that is the definition of the ePortfolio and what it can sort of be in terms of the online professional presence. The second area that we wanted to cover is sort of where can we use ePortfolios? Well, besides creating that online professional presence, you can use it in terms of your career and your career development, in terms of networking, and even getting a professional position. And I know that some of you are interested in that. There are some ideas that have to do with the professional ePortfolio. Research has shown, recent research from the American Associations of Colleges and Universities has looked at employers, one survey, and over 80% of that survey, which was back in 2017, showed that employers do look at your online professional presence. And so that usually not only means social media, but it can mean your personal ePortfolio website. So that's something to keep in mind. In addition, you can use that ePortfolio to post to your social media and connect with other people from your LinkedIn and your other social media accounts. It allows you to control that message, right? It shows that employer or that graduate school or even other opportunities out there, perhaps for consulting, about who you are and what skills that you bring that are unique and diverse. So you can describe your skills in many different ways in terms of text, but the ePortfolio allows you not only to reflect and say why those skills are important, but it can show some of those documents or those videos or those images about why you have those skills and how you have applied them in the past. And then of course the digital literacy skills in terms of just being able to present that online professional presence creates a professional identity for you. So it really does enhance your employability. All right, so here is my second question. Think about, what do you think are those skills the employer might like to see highlighted? So I said to you, okay, what would I want to show specifically in terms of those most valuable skills out there when you're interviewing for a job or a graduate school program? What are those skills that you think might be necessary? And you can put that in the chat. Technical aptitude, right, good. Technology skills. What else might be important? Collaboration skills, very good. Communication skills, your background, your education, your certifications, very good. Communication skills again, collaboration. Teaching experience, developing courses, very good, and even your research. So very good. So you can see that you have a good understanding of what are those critical skills that you need to include in that ePortfolio. And we've gone to those employers and asked them, and the top 5, these were all above 50% in terms of employers. They look at teamwork, written communication, problem solving, and analytical skills. So those 4 areas should be highlighted no matter what job or what area you want to put into your ePortfolio. So these are the, these are the things that you get asked in any interview, right? In terms of highlighting how do you show your teamwork, right? So those are projects that you've been in with groups. You could show the actual product, or you could show a description of what the product was, and then you could have either a video or an image to highlight that work. Obviously, written communication is the entire ePortfolio and the reflection there, but you also might want to talk about some of those things that you've developed and created. You said there was courses that you created, so you could share that information. Problem solving and analytical skills are those critical thinking skills that the folks out there are looking for in terms of workforce and workforce development. So not only what research you've done, but the decisions you have made. So if you can highlight those 4 different areas in terms of the ePortfolio, in terms of what would be relevant to your background and experience, you're off to a good start with the ePortfolio. What are those other elements, though, that you need to have in terms of artifacts? What are those basic components that are usually in almost every ePortfolio? Well, what we tell our students, and what I tell my students, and also tell myself in terms of developing my ePortfolio, these are the areas or or topics that I make sure that I have in my ePortfolio. I have the About Me or my biography, which Josie read to you at the very beginning. That's usually on my homepage, or part of it's on my homepage, and another page might be the About Myself. This is the question that you get, right, when people say, "Tell me about yourself," right? So think about what is your elevator speech, and that's sort of your elevator speech for that About Me or biography. You should also have a professional picture or image of yourself, of what you would like the world to see. And then the education, training, and skills were some of the areas that were covered in terms of the teamwork, right? The other technical skills and things that we had talked about, communication skills. And then specific examples of your work. And then most importantly is your contact information. And there should be a way that you can be contacted either from the ePortfolio website or your email and your professional phone contact. All right. So those artifacts are enabled on the ePortfolio and support those areas in terms of videos, images, documents, and things like that. All right, so we're going to go in depth a little bit on some of these in future slides. But if you have any questions, just go ahead and post them in the chat. All right, so now, okay, I'm ready. You've told me what an ePortfolio is. You told me how I can use it as a professional. Now what do I need to get started? Okay, so these are the main steps in terms of thinking about before and during the creation of your ePortfolio. The first thing to think about is, who is your main audience? What is the organization, institution, or the people who you want to see this? And what are their characteristics? What do they value? What are they looking for in terms of skills, credentials, even sort of what are their values in terms of the organization? If you can think about that. And what are they used to in terms of being informed about, and how can you show that you would be of value to them, right? How can you impact them? What might be something that they want to see besides your resume? How would you show that you have collaborative experience? What research projects have been valuable to you? How would you explain that in an elevator speech? An elevator speech being 2 to 3 minutes, right? Or 2 to 3 paragraphs perhaps on the ePortfolio. So you don't have an hour, you don't have even a half hour. How would you streamline that down to communicating, so to speak, in an abstract format, right? 250 words or less. How would you explain that project or that skill to that audience? So this will help you decide the audience, their characteristics, and what they want to see, which artifacts you're going to choose, right? So, and it will also lend itself in terms of design, right? What it looks like, what your ePortfolio is going to look like at the very end. There are many different platforms out there, and I think that the most common are Wix and Weebly. And I have my ePortfolio on Wix, and then I know that some of my other students have like Weebly. WordPress has been used in the past, and there's other platforms out there. The most important thing to know about these is that usually they're free. Okay? And I know that that's a consideration. What happens is when you use the free platform, sometimes you're limited in terms of space, but I haven't run out of space with my Wix, and I've posted lots of documents, images, and videos. Also, there is the removal of, there's usually like a small little logo, like on my portfolio, you can say that it shows that this is developed by Wix. It's usually not distracting, and I highly recommend that you go ahead and just test drive one of the platforms before you would go ahead and pay for it. Okay, and there might be reasons why you want to pay for it. You might want to remove that logo, or you might want to hide certain pages and things like that, but we can talk about that a little bit later. There are other options in terms of where you're located. If you already belong to an organization, there's usually some server space. Right now at Auburn University, we have choices, many different types of choices in terms of our institutional servers. They're not as easy to manipulate, right? Because they're controlled by your institution. So like SharePoint or Auburn Box. Box.com allows for some creativity in terms of the ePortfolio, but then it's controlled about who you can share that link with. And then of course you can create your own personal website if you are savvy enough to do that. I used to do that in terms of Netscape. That shows you how old I am. That was a long time ago, but I created my own website. I think that it's much easier to use a platform because it has these beautiful templates to use in terms of design. All right, I've got a question out there. What are my thoughts on having different ePortfolios for different areas such as academia or corporate America? I think that that is something for you to consider, right? So let's say we said your main audience was graduate school, or your main audience is a career that you're trying to get. I think that those are two distinct different audiences. I think you can cross-utilize some of that information, but I would perhaps consider thinking about making two different portfolios. And it's very easy to do. You can do that with the one account, and you can share the documents and videos and things like that. So that's a good question, and that's something for you to consider. Yes, we've had another comment out there from Dr. Brown, who says that she used up all her free space on WordPress, right? But it was worth keeping her information, and it allowed her to continue to develop it. I did the same thing with a Weebly account, and I paid for it because I had it for a different purpose, and it was less than $100. So it's not a significant amount of money. It may be something that you just need to save for. And one of the last areas, obviously, then are the pay sites like GoDaddy and things like that. I'd be concerned about those pay sites. I think that it might be better for you, if you're looking at it for the first time, to think about the free sites and then the support that you get from the site. Those are some of the things. You can review and compare them, and at our Auburn website you can look at some of the comparisons between Wix, Weebly, and WordPress. Other platforms will compare themselves to one another in terms of what they provide for free or what you have to pay for. And then you can look at the support in terms of the different types of tools, the different types of designs, and also the support, like the tutorials. I'm not familiar with Portfolio. I'm not sure if that's something that's inside of a learning management system. I get concerned about the free sites inside of learning management systems because you're not able to copy and use that information once you no longer have access to that learning management system. So be careful when it is embedded inside one of those like Canvas or Blackboard or things like that. All right. So what I say to you is there's lots of different choices out there, and if you're starting from scratch, I would use the wizard. Wix has a wizard that can lead you and ask you questions about how you want to develop this ePortfolio, and it'll lead you very gracefully and easily to picking the types of format and what you'd like to see. All right, so someone has helped us with the Portfolium. It's portfolium.com. So if you'd like to explore that, that's another platform that you could perhaps think about using. I have another question out there that means, that looks at pre-existing links in terms of, yeah, so asking about using it on LinkedIn, and yes, I'm gonna go to that. I definitely have that as one of my last slides in terms of reusing this link, this ePortfolio link on your LinkedIn or other social media, and I'll come back to that. All right, very good. Okay, so lots of choice. For those of you who have a hard time making decisions, you need to think about that, right? And do a little bit of exploration before you get started. Think about it in terms of using the templates that help you create a better format. It allows for accessibility in terms of ADA, the American Disabilities Association, so that your website is ADA 508 compliant. It gives you the correct color scheme, so you're not matching, you know, yellow and green on a background and making blue and you can't see your words, so that's very important. It also helps you structure your ePortfolio in terms of very good organization. You can do some editing though and moving it around. I've done that, but you should start from that basic template, and then it helps you with the functionality. It gives you connections to your other pages, how to link things, how to size things. And so there's lots of benefits to using these online platforms that can help you design your ePortfolio and make it a professional presence. Okay, so before you hit the go button, okay, you should think about reviewing and updating your resume, because all the information that you're going to put into the ePortfolio should come from your resume, because you're making this your online resume, but you're enhancing it, right? So let's go ahead and make sure that your resume or your CV is in good format, that you understand what your professional career has been, and you're having that proof, so that if you put that document up, you're ready to go and you're not having spelling errors or chronological errors, or you're missing something. All right, get your stuff together. That means that think about your resume in terms of those artifacts and your audience, right? So get those pictures, those videos, those projects, get those things all together and get them into the format that you know that you can upload them. So if something needs to be scanned or an image needs to be cropped, get that all ready beforehand. And then I recommend that you storyboard or outline your site, right? Think about, okay, Dr. Cordy said, or Leslie said, that you should think about having an About Me page, right? You should have a education or skills page. And then what other types of pages am I going to have, and what am I going to have on those pages, and how will they be linked? Okay, so if you can Google Storyboard, there's many different templates out there, but it's basically just drawing up your website and figuring out what goes on each page. You can storyboard from a PowerPoint template, or you can just create an outline. I want to know how to create an ePortfolio for academia and then one for job hunting. You can do that. You could perhaps create 2 different sites, or you might have one that would be certain pages you would highlight in terms of what you wanted to be known about academia versus what you would want to know for job hunting, right? So you might have, for an academic position, you might want to show your research more and highlight your research more. You might move around a few pages, or you might want to have one that is for job hunting, that shows your completion, that you have achieved your credentials. All right. All right, so we've looked at our resume, we've looked at and gathered our documents, we've storyboarded, and now we want to go ahead and create an account. So you have to have done your research in terms of Wix and Weebly or the other platforms that are out there. And I think I recommended already that you look at your tutorials, so that can help you understand how to complete the first few tasks about logging in and what choices you have to make. All right. And then choosing a template, it's time to choose what color schemes, what format that you want. Do you want it to page down? Do you want it to be tabs at the top? How do you want it organized? And I would say up until that choose a template point, right, when you're beginning to design, that can take a significant amount of time if you have to revise your resume, or you have to change your documents, or you have to scan them and they're not in one spot. So that's a whole nother discussion in terms about saving your files. But once you get to choose that template, I think that it can take only a few hours, between 2 and 4 hours, to actually get a rough draft of your ePortfolio up and ready. So think about that in terms of your time management. My students are always scared about developing the ePortfolio, and I think if you follow this sort of best practices up until you get to the template, you're ready to go, and it should only take you a few hours. Okay. All right, so examples of professional portfolio. So this can answer your question too, in terms of how do I create one perhaps for academia versus one for job hunting. You're going to be able to choose your different artifacts, right? Which projects would you like to highlight the most? In general, I would say that most of us, if we've reached a certain point in our career, you can probably have the same ePortfolio. For a student, it may be a little different. You may have more of your projects versus and things that you've completed in school versus things that you've accomplished in the work environment. So you have an example ePortfolio right there. You can see that that is my welcome page. It is also part of my a little bit of my biography. You can see that I have my link there, which is, even though I use the free site, the free Wix site, where it shows there down at the bottom, powered and created by Wix.com, and there's usually a little the little Wix man at the top. But I've changed the link because I have a free URL generator from Auburn University, and we'll talk about that at the end. So you can see that it doesn't say Wix, but it does go to that Wix site. So it's Obby / Leslie Cordy, and so Obby is obviously Obby is our mascot, our tiger here at Auburn University, and so that makes it very useful and very professional and easy for people to remember. All right, what are some other examples? I have 2 examples posted here for you to look at. I'm just going to be mindful of my time. One is for Dr. Shi Lin, and the other one is for Naget Ahmed. These were both of my students. Naget is finishing her dissertation as we speak, and then Dr. Shi Lin is a graduate of the Auburn University program, and she is now faculty member at East Carolina University. So I have her direct link right there for you to see. She does use Weebly, and I encourage you to explore it. You can see that her welcome page includes her a brief description of who she is, and then her curriculum vitae is a download right there. And then you can see here, she specifically geared it toward research, teaching, outreach, and service, but she does have another page that talks about me. So that is a more academic type of sort of ePortfolio. There are other examples that you can look at in terms of the Auburn ePortfolio project, and I have that link up there directly for the ePortfolio examples. On Naget's, you can see that she has on her About Me page, hers is more geared toward her profession. She's talked about her specialties in terms of teaching English as a second language, having a background in adult community education, and also clinical psychology. So you can see on hers too that when I took the picture, the screenshot, that you can see the Wix.com, and you can see that that label was at the top of the page. That is for the free site. All right. What are some basic do's and don'ts, or other best practices that we should know about? Let's see. In regard to ePortfolio platforms, you know if the content is transferable to other platforms. I'm not sure about that. If you want to create 2 different sites, you can share that information. So what you need to do is you need to think about what format your artifacts are in. And if you're going to spend some time on the front end in terms of exploring which one is best for you, I think you should probably minimize having to transfer it to another site. That's another reason to look at the free sites rather than your institutional sites, because sometimes that information is not transferable, nor can you get to it after you leave that organization. All right, so what are some do's and don'ts? There are some things that I have found that are important in terms of reminding my students in terms of copyright issues, ethical and visual literacy. If you use something, make sure that you have permission to use it. If it is not your image, you need to make sure that it is from Creative Commons or it has a Creative Commons license that it can be shared, because if you're out there and it says Shutterstock or has another watermark on that, that shows that you are not professional because you haven't purchased that and are not using that fairly. So you can Google fair use and you can find out more about that, but your library usually, the university libraries usually have lots of information about fair use. Make sure that you protect your content. In most cases, I encourage you to use documents that are PDF, right? And even though they can be downloaded or printed, they can't be manipulated or changed. Or you can do that in terms of Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Distiller, that can protect your documents. Use those templates and designs to help you with images and text, and then you can make it that your information is accessible, right? So that you have a description of the image so that if someone has a screen reader who is visually impaired, it can be read, okay? And that would show you're savvy. You can also show where those images come from, as before I showed you, right, in terms of linking toward Sheilin's website, so you can see directly where that came from. So I think that's good. There are some filters on some of the search engines like Bing. You can tell Bing to search for images that are from Creative Commons or have a shareable license. That's the best way to do it. And then of course those images inside of PowerPoint, like these that I have here are clip art, and you know, they're not the best images out there, but they are free for me to use in terms of highlighting this information, and I don't have to worry about sourcing them. Okay, so what do I want to tell you about the don'ts? Besides using, not paying for Shutterstock images or things like that, be very careful about hot spots in terms of once it's up, it's usually up. Okay, even if you unpublish it, take it down, there's always a chance that someone has taken a screenshot of it. So be very careful in terms of what you're going to post, okay? The rule of thumb is what you want to portray as a professional. So your values are important, but also what are your values as a professional, not necessarily as an individual. And remember that you know, that your opinion on some things is not necessarily the opinion of others. So be careful when posting to the ePortfolio. Okay, so I think that some of the things that, or questions that came up earlier, sorry about that, my little finger. In terms of return on investment, we had an earlier question in terms of how do we maximize our use in terms of LinkedIn or other social media. Well, this is what I tell my students. I think the ePortfolio is much better than LinkedIn, right? You can comment on LinkedIn, you can connect with people on LinkedIn, you can even put some of your credentials, but you have this ability to use your professional presence for people to explore more about you if you have the ePortfolio, all right? So that link should be there for others on your social media presence, okay? You should always have a hard copy link of your resume, so if someone wants to explore what your credentials are in more depth, you have that available, not just individual project by project. Okay, so that helps make it more robust. Include your information from your ePortfolio on your organizational website. I know I've got a tiny little picture on the Auburn University website, but you can click to go to my ePortfolio and learn more about me rather than just where my office is and how long I've been at Auburn University, right? And I include my ePortfolio in my email signature. And so that really helps in terms of being able to share my information with others always. And you can try to include this on your business cards too. If you have a business card, you can include your web link on your business cards. And then lastly, you can do some fun things like this QR code, right? This QR code, there are free generators out there. If you scan this little QR code, it goes directly to my ePortfolio, and I can put this QR code on the back of my business card so that people could scan it right then and there. For instance, at a conference, or I can put it on posters, right, when I'm going to a conference, or my materials, my handouts, so people can go directly to my ePortfolio. So there's lots of good things about those QR code generators, and they can be for free. And remember, it also made my web link really easy. Rather than Leslie Cordy homepage Wix, it said Aubie .ie/Leslie Cordy. That was from a QR code, this same QR code generator. Okay. All right, so I've completed most of my information for you. I hope that it was interesting, but I'm trying to see if we've discussed some of those aspects. Do you think that you're going to be able to go ahead and do it? Do you feel that it'll help you with your printed materials, or do you think perhaps it's going to be something that you're going to do in terms of the modern resume? Good. I got a C, so that helps. B and C. Good. Excellent. Excellent. I mean, there's no right answer. You could say that I'm boring. It's okay. But I hope not. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Good, good. Yeah, I mean, I just think it definitely makes you more unique, more competitive. We've heard of nurses even being chosen over other nurses, or nursing students being chosen over other nursing students in a very competitive situation because they had put together their ePortfolios. They went above and beyond in terms of their academic programs. All right, so in conclusion, here is what we covered. We covered what an ePortfolio was, where you could use it and why, the basic steps in terms of creating an ePortfolio and the materials that you wanted to get, some brief examples of professional ePortfolios. I can encourage you to go out and explore some other ones, especially at the Auburn University website. And of course, the basic do's and don'ts, the best practices. So I want to emphasize to you that employers, whether they're academic employers or government employers or industry employers, is that they really want to have clear evidence of your work, your credentials. They enjoy being able to see them digitally, and they obviously are looking to see how you demonstrate those professional skills, and the ePortfolio is the way to do that. So you're on your way. I've included some references. This information will be posted by the Commission for Graduate Students and shared with you after the session. But now we can open it up to some questions if you'd like. If there are specific questions and like to unmute your mic. Let's see, I've got one here. Could you discuss the types of personal images that should be on your web pages? Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so I've used a professional headshot usually for my homepage, and I usually I'm in some form of professional dress, right? Because that's the image that I want to portray, that I am an academic professional, a professor, an instructor, an academician. So you can see that I'm wearing business clothes, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a suit, but perhaps if you know that the organization wants you to have a suit, then you would have perhaps a picture in a professional dress. Other images that I have are from me presenting at conferences and meetings. So of course I'm in professional dress, but you can see me sort of in action pointing to my poster. I've also had professional images of classes that I've taught or field experiences with my students. Okay, so those are some of the images that I've used. I know that some people have their volunteering opportunities when they go on missions or events like that. You have to be careful with those types of images because you need to make sure that you have the permission to take those photos, especially if they're children, if they're minors. It's not good to necessarily have their faces shown or document perhaps some things that would be considered inappropriate on a web page. You could still reflect on that experience. You could have some information about of that experience, perhaps a photo of you alone during that experience. So that's another thing to think. How often do I update my ePortfolio? I usually try to do it once or twice every 6 months, and usually right after I do something that I know adds to my professional repertoire. So like after today, I probably would post this information that I have this workshop that I created, right? And post a link to that information. So as soon as possible, because you know you tend to forget, right? And all the wonderful things that you do, and I know you all do wonderful things. So the sooner that you can do it, or you can keep like a running list or a box of the documents and things like that so that you can get to it. So every few months, I think, is a good idea, and it's really easy to do once you've created that. Where will you place the ePortfolio address on the CV? I usually put my web portfolio address at the very top of my page, where it has my name and my contact information. My ePortfolio goes right up there. Have I included video presentations as well? Yes, I have. In fact, from my new homepage, you can see an interview that I did with AAACE, and that is on my homepage. Because it answers a lot of questions about me and about myself, and so I'm going to be going up for tenure, and so I think it makes a good impression right from the get-go.
Leslie, this is John Black, if you have time for a
Hi,
question. Hi. So first of all, thank you. I deal in a lot of the same spaces you have in the past, government, military, and that because of that, I recently got my doctorate and I'm sort of branching out in academic. My question to you is, if I have space already established for my pre-existing lives, so to speak, but maybe I use ePortfolio as tying together my current research, do you have any thoughts on how you would sort of reference that back? I'll storyboard everything out with Visio or something, but just good thoughts or practices about how you take some past stuff, business strategy type consulting and military consulting, and then the idea of going into adjunct work for academia, and then tying that together through a branding or a presence.
Right. So you're saying, how do you take that stuff that's past and it's still on a website and put it into the new website, or vice versa?
Well, correct. And what I'm more concerned about is redundancy, because if the stuff's already out there on multiple sites and it's also on ePortfolio, at what point does an employer or person wants to know more about you get tired of reading the same thing?
You know, I like redundancy because it shows a consistent picture of who you are, John. So I'm not so worried about that. So like if you do a Google search and all this same stuff comes up on you, I think that that's good because that shows that you're credible, that's your truth, okay? I would say I would make the one ePortfolio, and you could connect to those links, but I would say you could have a page where you know all those links are, right? That might be a way to demonstrate it with a title, or you know, you definitely have to reflect on what those experiences are. So you could take a screenshot of that and incorporate it into the ePortfolio too.
No, I like that because what I was sketching out as I was listening to you is almost sort of breaking it down by dimension. You know, the business dimension, I'm an expert witness in legal. So the legal dimension, the academic dimension, and I could break those out and then link them back or something similar to that.
Yep. So that's exactly right, John. The storyboard really helps you design, right? Like, who am I, right? And you know, people do it. They even do it with like 3x5 cards, and you put what's on those 3x5 cards, and then you try to gather those 3x5 cards into what is that tab or what is that page going to be. You know, so there's very creative ways of doing that, but it has to make sense to you, and once it makes sense to you, then it'll make sense to others.
Oh no, you're documenting back to my old school with intelligence analysis, where I've got strings and 3x5 cards on the board about looking at everything.
I know. So, we're dating ourselves, but I still love 3x5. Oh well.
So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. There's another question out there that talks about ResearchGate or other information. I don't have my ORCID ID here, but I do have that on my email signature, and so I need to add my ORCID ID, which is an ID that talks about all my citations. You can have your Google citations linked too. So I would say that those would be very important in terms of the academic environment. And perhaps if they're not on that homepage or About Me page, they certainly would be on your research or your publications page, okay? All right, so I think we have a few minutes left if there are any other burning questions. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it back over to Josie to talk about AAACE and the Commission of Graduate Students.
Well, I do have one burning question, Leslie.
One burning question.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't have any knowledge of ResearchGate. Do you know enough about that to discuss what that is?
ResearchGate is where you can post your, and I don't know if anybody else has used it. I know that I have not posted. I have looked for information on ResearchGate, and you can connect that to you can subscribe to a listserv, and you can get notified about alerts and things like that about when things are coming out about your topic or your research.
Okay.
Okay. I know there's another one out there, academy.edu, but you have to pay for who's looking at your stuff and how you're listed. And then I guess Dr. Brown has said, yep, ResearchGate is an open source way to share your publications. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Josie. Thank you so much, and you're free to contact me.
Okay. Again, let's in the chat,